Now, Bruce, this particular episode of Psycho Schizo Espresso is in fact a landmark episode because it marks our very first foray into the rarefied world of fine art. So we're going to come into contact face to face with a number of old masters: Michelangelo, Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Botticelli, Picasso, Van Gogh, but all of them in the guise of one man, a certain Mr. David Henty. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Dave, Bruce. David Henty used to be one of the UK's top passport forgers, okay? Until he was caught, banged up, did an art class in prison. And then when he came out, he became one of the UK's top art forgers, as you do, until he was caught, banged up. And then when he came out, he decided to go straight, because such was his reputation that people started coming up to him and saying, "Hey, Dave, can you do us a legitimate, authentic David Henty forgery of a Picasso?" Which he still does to this day for a pretty penny for the great and the good of society. In fact, you know what? Between you and me, mate, I'm kind of secretly hoping he'll knock me out of cheeky Picasso because I'm lagging behind on the old mortgage.
Either that or pictures of Matchstick Men. Which takes us right back to the status quo.
Old status quo. I know.
A quick
Francis
Lowry.
Rossi.
A quick. I'm sure. Could he knock out a quick Lowry for us?
Well, I think he might be able to do one. You're from Worksop. You're a Lowry man. I mean, I'm from the south of France.
And Lowry's it was other side of the Pennines. Lowry. He was from Manchester.
Was he? Oh,
Yeah,
we've just upset half of our audience, haven't we? Half of our listeners. I reckon we better get this guy on, mate. See what he's made of, shall we? Before he might be banged up again before we talk to him. So let's get him on now.
Yeah.
Dave,
okay.
Welcome to Psycho Schizo Espresso, mate. Hello, Dave. How are you, mate?
Hi, Kev. Yeah, good, thanks.
Good to see you, mate. Now, look, I've got to ask, what's that behind you? Is that one of yours? Or is that the original?
That's a Rembrandt. No, I knocked it up the other week.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was an original, mate, you wouldn't be talking to us, would you?
Well, I don't know if you want me to spin round, but I've got a few paintings there. Got a couple of Caravaggios here, a Monet, Fragonard, Sickert. I've got a Picasso for you, Bruce.
Just for me. Balls to Picasso.
Yeah,
that was my album. It was my album cover, Kevin. I did an album cover.
Oh yeah. Oh right.
I did. It's a bit of student union graffiti. You know the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is brilliant, but now I'm not so sure of that stuff. And it was just somebody put two squares on the wall and put balls to Picasso. So I thought, well, I'll use that. I did that. I found a toilet wall. Actually, EMI refused to let me use a real toilet. I said there are thousands of shithouse walls available for free for the price of 20 pence admission. I said, so you just go in there and sit on the crapper, get your Sharpie out, balls to Picasso, 2 balls, picture, photographer, bang, $300. There's your album cover, done. Would they do that?
Yeah.
No, they said, no, we can't do filming in a public toilet. So it's never stopped some of your other artists.
I was going to say, did that case ever go to court, Bruce?
No. What was it? Who was it? Peter Wingard in Paddington Station, I think that was the one. But they actually built a shithouse wall in the studio at a cost of $30,000. Wow. So I could draw on it with a Sharpie.
Were there like loads of people hanging around outside?
What? No, not in the studio.
Dodgy looking people? No.
What, in the toilets, right. You mean? Yeah, well, there usually are loads of dodgy people hanging around in the toilets.
Well, that's how we met, mate. Anyway, we won't go into
toilets.
that.
Yeah. Right,
yeah, that's right. David, listen, I've got to ask you, how did you get into this, mate? How did it all start? How did you get into the copying game then?
The art or the forgery?
Well, the art, really. There's so many questions. Bruce and I have been chatting about this. We could ask you. We literally don't know where to start. The first one is, people, I've seen it written that, you are a professional art forger. But to me, art forgery seems to be describing something where you are intentionally deceiving for money, but that's not what you're doing, is it? Really?
Not anymore. No.
No.
Yeah, I did have an exhibition called. It had a tiny little no that you had to look for a magnifying glass, and then it said no intent to deceive, because obviously we are, and I've got there's 4 brothers and my sister, and we were all really creative, and I could always draw, and my brother Steve, he was they wanted to send him to a special school. At 10 years old, because he was copying Michelangelo drawings. So they wanted, but we were all boys, and my sister was the youngest. So we were all like, we were into boxing and all different stuff. And so we thought it was, he didn't want to go and do that, because we'd all take the mickey. But we could always do it. And my dad was an antique dealer, and from a very early age, he used to buy these old Victorian paintings, just like wall fillers, really. And then he'd say, "Oh, Dave, can you put a couple of figures in there, or put a river and someone fishing to make them, a bit more lively?" And he used to sell them to the Americans. And so I used to, from an early age, add figures, age them back up again, varnish, a bit of dirty varnish, sign them with different names, a better name. And my dad used to sell them, but I never really thought there was much money in it, because my dad never used to pay me. He was a bit reticent,
Dads have a habit of doing that, don't they?
Yeah. Well, he was quite good at what he did, and so I learned a lot, really. And also, he broke a lovely vase one day, and he stuck it back together, and then I painted it, and then we glazed it over the top, and so you get a grounding in these sort of things. And I had to age paintings up, and I experimented how to get the right age and the right patina. So we could all actually do it. 2 of my brothers now they specialise in old watches, vintage watches. My sister's a best-selling author. She's got 24 best number ones.
Brilliant.
My brother Steve, who had the most talent, is now a carpenter. He makes stained glass windows and stuff like that. But he didn't. He was the most talented, but he didn't follow it through, because he'd try all different things and he wouldn't stick at one thing. I was less talented than him, but I kept at it.
He talks about this.
So listen, you do watches, you do paintings, you do tables. I don't know, you've got quite a family business going there, Dave. Yeah. Do you knock out a few? Can you knock out a few passports for us?
Do you know why I was on the passports? It was a friend of mine that was doing it.
I didn't know, were you? I didn't know it was a joke.
Oh, right.
Oh, were you? I didn't know you. Oh, no.
Well, I was only on there for the security, because they couldn't work out how to do the watermarks and the security issue.
Right.
And they asked me, and that's how I got involved, because I could do the watermarks. Because I've been experimenting with, because one of the things in art is the hardest thing to tell is watercolours. And some of the watercolours used to have watermarks on them. So you hold them up to the light and you see the little, so I was experimenting with old paper and getting the watermarks in the paper, and then putting this is my first forgeries, really. I did them from inside the prison when I was serving time for the passports. I used to send them out.
Dave, I didn't know. I was only a little throwaway joke. I didn't mean we've excavated a huge bit of your past here, mate. Sorry about that.
It was 30 years ago.
Dave, I mean, electronics, just on the subject of passports, all these electronic chips and all the rest of it must have taken it's taken all the fun out of life,
It's taken all the fun. But, do you know what now? If you know someone who's really good on the computer, like you, Adam, I bet he could work a way to to chip something up, or So I think what one man does, another man can copy. Whatever you put on the banknotes, I'm sure someone, these new banknotes that I'm sure someone somewhere is working it out how to do it. And it depends. Yeah. What expertise, what you can throw at it, really. But
has it got a lot more difficult now, David? Let's go back to forgery. So art forgery. I mean, there's a show on the telly at the moment, Fake or Fortune, isn't there, with Fiona Bruce? I mean, these days you've got electron microscopes, you've got all kinds of things, X-rays of paintings. Has it got more difficult as time's gone on?
Not really, no. what you do is you cut your cloth to the. I collect old paints and stuff, so I use the paints appropriate to the artist. So if I'm going to do an early 20th century artist, I'll use lead white. I use the different paints that they would have used. But there's a theory now. Billy and I, my friend Billy the Brush, he's a forger as well. We get together every week and we work out all these. We look at, we get all the news and that's just come out and they've got a new test for this. So what he does and what I do, if we were going to do a proper forgery, we would go from the 1960s, 70s, like an American artist or someone like that, because you can't actually tell then. I had a Basquiat a little while ago, and the forensics wanted to take it to do a test, but because I painted it on the 1970s canvas, and because I used the same paint he did, which is acrylic, it's a plastic paint, they wouldn't take it because they said we can't test it because it's the same paint. With the oil paint, it's different. They can do a few tests on that, but you can still, I bake them. We're still looking to, challenge whatever they say. We like to find a way around it.
What is it then that makes a good forger? So you just said one of the things there. You've got a great art memory. That hadn't occurred to me. I don't know about you, Bruce, but it's certainly not to me. For instance, could if you're a great artist, let's say you're a Picasso or a Da Vinci, would you automatically be good at forging other artists then, or is the skill of the forger something slightly different, Dave?
I think with the skill of the forger, I'll tell you a little story. At the moment, I'm doing a book with a professor over in Australia. Funny enough.
Oh yeah.
And he's a professor in Caravaggio. He knows every little detail and stuff. And we've got hold of a 400-year-old canvas, it's an old religious painting. We're going to clean it. So I'm going to take all the paint off and get it back to the bare canvas. Then we're going to put lead white over it, so you can't X-ray anything, see any details or anything left on the canvas. And then we're having the paints made up by a forensic team, so they're only the paints he would have used, and there's nothing in it that shouldn't be there, no bits of metal or something else. There's about 100 missing Caravaggios, and one was found the other day in the loft. Right. They made 140 million.
Wow.
So and it's not even right. I don't think it was real. I went and saw it at the Carnegie, and it wasn't real. And David Forrest, he's the expert, and he said that's not a real Caravaggio. It's a copy. It's a contemporary copy. So anyway, what we're doing is I've done quite a few Caravaggios. So now I'm in the mind of Caravaggio. So now we're doing a lost Caravaggio. So I'm making it up.
Right.
So what your question, Kev, is?
That sounds like a TV show, Dave.
Well,
yeah.
But he's going to write a book about it, detailing his art history, the details of stuff, and how I go about painting it. Because what you do once you learn an artist, Caravaggio, for instance, we're talking about him, but with Picasso, and I can do a Picasso fairly easy because I've done quite a lot, and you understand their handwriting, So they've got little tricks that they do. Caravaggio would put a bit of dark and a bit of light, like a cloth, coming from the dark, so the white comes forward and the black sets it back. So once you know his little tricks, how he gets the drama, you can start making up, and you see quite a few of his models, which a lot of people haven't noticed. They're the same people, even though he painted them in different continents. He painted in Malta, he painted in Florence, Rome. Yeah, he was on the run all over the place.
Yeah. He stabbed somebody, didn't he? He was a proper rock and roll painter.
He was the first, the punk rock of art. We call him.
Yeah, he was. He was. That one in Malta is amazing. The beheading of John the Baptist. That one, because I went
the massive one.
Yeah, it's huge, and I went into the corner of the the building. It's in the side building off the cathedral there, and the cathedral's incredible as well. All these skeletons of knights and things like that embedded in the flagstones and stuff. And I went in the corner. I'd never seen a Caravaggio before.
Oh.
I mean, never seen a real one, you know.
Yeah.
And I wandered in, and I was, I mentally did a big, because I was in a church, you know. I thought, but it was like fucking hell, you know, like wow. I mean, it was more real than real, and it was just coming to get you from absolutely astonishing, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, how does somebody create that much emotion and drama and everything? It's truly extraordinary, you know. So good on you if you can create that.
I mean, actually, Dave said it earlier. The Caravaggio is pretty much like the punk rocker of the art world. I know John Lydon's a really keen artist.
Is he?
But that was the weird thing about punk. I mean, that's the strange, because relating it to relating as punk, as painting is to masters, to Lowry's, to things like that, and punk music was to other types of music, to classical music. You have the same kind of limitations where you say, well, could you copy a Sex Pistols track? And the answer is, it's not hard, just knock it out. But could you copy a symphony? And it's like, that's a bit more there. But then it's structured, and then even some of the great jazz things like that, you know, you can copy them to an extent, but you can't. I mean, I know how difficult it is when you go in and do your own stuff, and you say, just copy what you just did, and you can't. Well, you can't. I mean, it's just like it's physically, it might appear to have the same dimensions, but emotionally, it's not the same. It's just not the same, and you just can't get there. So that's why sometimes it's brilliant now with Pro Tools, because everything you record is there forever, and therefore is usable. And if you do something that one night in the studio after a pint, and you did this vocal, and you go, I could sing it live, but I can't recreate that exact emotion that I did right then.
This is one of the things that I was really interested in, what you've just said. It's good when you click into the flow, when you get into that mindset, you know, you click over. There's no time. You just let yourself go. There's no thing. You do something, like we do art. I do art. I've done a Picasso once, and I couldn't for the life of me work out how I did it, because I was just gone, you know. It was almost like I woke up a couple of hours later with this Picasso. And it's the same thing you're saying, you know.
Yes, exactly.
When you haven't got those restraints, and you're just sort of in that mindset, and you click over, and the flow, isn't it? It's when you're in the flow. You're in that.
I've got a 10-minute track on the solo record that's been kicking around for ages, and I actually don't remember recording it. But I'm like, when did we do that? You know? and it was like and it's actually all based on a loop of Moonlight Sonata. So they just put physically the needle on the record, and you can hear the record going, and then you just loop it, and then guitars and things just layering. It's a real vibe. And then I went into some, you know, rambling, singing thing, making it up as I went along. And rediscovered it. And my girlfriend was like, that's amazing. I went, I said, you know, we'll clean it up a bit and we'll, you know, make it nice. She goes, no,
it's cool.
It's amazing as it is. I went, but there's all these bits wrong with it and things like that. She goes, no, they're not wrong. They just sound great. I said, but I ran out of words to sing, so I made funny noises. She goes, but the funny noises are great. I said, well, I put words to it. Well, we tried it. And it's not as good. You know?
Because that's raw. It's coming out.
And
that's sometimes with the art, Kev. You know, you're saying about doing we were saying about Franz Klein. That's the thing. Sometimes when you get in that mindset, and you might sit and look at a canvas for 2 hours or half the day, then go like that, and that's it. You know, and it's perfect. And I think that's
the psychology of the flow state is really interesting. There's a lot of work been done on that by a researcher called Csikszentmihalyi, who's a very well-known psychological researcher. And it gets very complicated, but basically the psychology of the flow state, what flow states seem to emerge when, for want of a better way of putting it, the talent and the resources that we have available at that particular time directly align and match with the level of the challenge that you're faced with.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you, for example, we all know when time drags, don't we? When actually we're faced with something that we're either completely bored with or we find very, very difficult. Time's going to go on and on and on. Well, at least we perceive it to go on and on and on. The closer the alignment between the level of talent and resources that we have at a particular time and the challenge that we're faced with at that particular time, if they're perfectly aligned, then time doesn't drag at all and we just kind of vanish in the moment. So 2 hours can appear like 2 minutes. So, I mean, like the William Blake line, Bruce, about eternity.
Infinity an hour and
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's basically Blake describing the flow state. So that's the psychology of the flow state, Dave, and whether that makes any sense to you as an artist, which seems like it does. But it's really interesting. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you was Bruce was saying that the idea of no two takes are the same.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true when you're copying a work of art. There's always going to be some slight difference. You're never going to make each one identical, or are you? Is your level of attention to detail that rigorous that actually you can't tell two David Henty copies apart?
Well, you hope you can't, but then
okay.
What Bruce said earlier was the ones that are really true is when you're not doing a copy, you're doing a work of art in that style. Channeling it. Basically, you're one of my tricks, because I wanted to ask you, both of you, because sometimes when you're locked out, I mean, you must find it as a creative, I sit around for days and I'm depressed because I can't actually, it's like I can't paint. And then something, I'll see something or I hear something or music, a film, even the cutout of something, it spark in me and I'm off again, and the door's open and I'm back creating.
Yeah.
And that with an artist, it's really up and down. It's like it's all or nothing. You're either suicidal, a bit like bipolar.
Bipolar, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that, because when you're locked out or when you can't access that that creativity, I mean, you just think, I'm useless. I can't even draw. I can't draw this, but then you need a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be a trigger for music. It can be a trigger. But like you said, you heard that radio, the needle, and you're using that sonata, and that might be a trigger, and you go, and it sets a chain reaction off,
So we're hoping you are enjoying our little chat on Psycho Schizo Espresso, but don't forget, we do have a special thing for you. If you want to pay £4 a month, you can become a Patreon, which means you get the unedited content, you get the extra long episodes, and you can become a Patreon if you want at www.patreon.com/Psycho Schizo Espresso. And now, back to the music.
Dave, we were talking like a little bit earlier about, I was asking you whether you work from photographs or whether you work from paintings, and you were saying, you've got to work from paintings. So presumably, like you were saying, you go into an art gallery and you look at the painting that you want to copy. There it is on the wall. I mean, presumably you don't take photographs of that. You've then got to leave the gallery, go home to your studio and work from memory. I mean, in order to produce, it's just dawned on me, in order to produce the kind of works of the quality that you do produce, how on earth do you remember then the details? I mean, almost the individual brush strokes that you're looking at in a gallery. How do you actually keep that in your mind to that level of detail?
Well, I'll give you, for instance, I'm painting the Supper at Emmaus by Caravaggio, that's in the National at the moment. And I've seen it loads of times, but I saw it a while ago, and it's like I take a photograph of it in my memory. So, but then what I have to do is I have to walk out the gallery with blinkers on, so I don't get distracted with anything else, because then it'll fade. But yeah, I've always had that. That's why I was a good forger, because funny enough.
How do you get on with? Because obviously I'm wearing reading speckies and Kevin is as well, and but eyesight is everything for you. I mean, so how do you get on with, as you get older and things like that? And does that make a difference? Have you noticed?
If you paint in a good light, it obviously helps. Painting in the gloom. I mean, I don't always paint with glasses on, but it does help. In the morning, my eyes are fresh and I can sort of crack on without them. But as my eyes get a little bit tired, and a little bit, I suppose you like your voice, it gets a little bit ragged around the edges, and I put my glasses on, and I've got another couple of hours, 2-3 hours.
I wish I had glasses in my voice. That'd be great. Just put my speckies on down there and do it. Yeah. No, that's fascinating.
So Dave, do we know the kinds of conditions that the old masters painted in? I mean, going on for what Bruce was going to say.
You're reading my mind there, Kevin. I was going to ask that question. How did they manage to paint when the sun went down?
Well, I mean, a lot of these painters, Caravaggio, for instance, because I'm just working on it at the moment, they say that he had one of his places where he rented a studio. He knocked a hole through the roof, and then so the sun would come down, it would hit a mirror, and then would shine the mirror onto his subjects that he's painting. And then he'd have because the sun moves over, he'd have a boy moving the mirror just slightly every time, so he can get that light, But then that's only for the highlights. For the majority of the painting, it's just you need a good light, but it's like shadow. It's the background basically.
Yeah.
And then you have a few high notes that you really want the good light for, and you want it. That's what's going to set the picture alight. That's what's going to bring it to life.
So Dave, are you saying then you've got, like, when you go into a gallery, have you got like a photographic memory for like artworks and paintings? And if you do, is it just for art, or do you have like generally a photographic memory for other stuff?
No, I can't remember anything apart from art. And I don't remember dates, or when I read a book and stuff, it sort of seems to go in one ear and come out the other, or go in, just come out some and dissipate. But then I'm only looking for techniques, or little bits of how someone might have mixed their colours, or how they might have used a certain technique. That's all I'm interested in, basically. And so no, with the memory sort of thing, what I do is I just mentally take a photograph of the work. You scan it and then you take a photograph in your mind, and you seem to. I can draw on that when I'm painting. I use a picture as a reference, but then I don't look at the picture that much. It's only to make sure the shapes are there. Everything's there. But then I've already got it in my mind, and I don't want to say channel, because you channel into how the artist would have done it. But from experience, from being an artist, that if the light's coming this way, the highlights will be there and the shadows there. So that that's just basic the makeup of the painting.
Well, do you know what, Dave? I know Bruce and I were talking about this when we knew you were coming on. We were actually talking about this. You just touched on it there about the idea that you can kind of channel the kind of, in a way, the mind of the artist that you're working on. I mean, are you, as a psychologist, I'm really interested in this, and so is Bruce. Are you able to kind of get into the mindset of the great masters, or any painter that you are copying and imitating to that extent of detail? Are you able to kind of, deduce anything from, how they painted, what kind of a person they were? If you didn't know, for instance, anything about Van Gogh or anything about Vermeer,
Yeah.
and you were going to copy their work without
Yeah.
knowing anything about the artist, would you be able to work out at the end of it that these were two very different men?
Yeah. I mean, there was a funny thing. I did a Van Gogh with a bandaged ear.
Yeah.
For someone, and I couldn't get it right. And I just, I was doing it, and I was thinking to myself, usually I could do them quite easily. Anyway, went to the courtauld to have a look.
You did get the right ear, didn't you, Dave?
Yeah, no, this was his nose.
Wasn't it?
This was he had a sort of hook in his nose, and I couldn't quite get it right. And then I went to the courtauld, saw it in person, and then I realised he had difficulty as well painting his nose, because there was different. You could see that where he'd mucked it up and then put it back, But coming back to channeling the artist, I'll tell you what my method is, Kevin. Is I just because I'm doing Caravaggio at the moment, so my mind is on Caravaggio. I tend to have DVDs on or something in the background, the film, Caravaggio film, something along that in Italian. I usually like it. But then what I do at night, I read, and in the bath, when I finish work, and I read all about Caravaggio, everything I can. I imagine I'm in his shoes working. I'm looking, because I've got the same problems he has. When he's doing a face in the half light, there's problems there. It's like anything, making a song. You've always got, whether harmonies or whether it all works. Well, it's the same thing with this, the shadow there, and there's a bit of light on the ear, etc. So we're looking at the same problem. The artist and I. But the thing with Caravaggio, I found them really difficult, and I can usually get an artist quite well. But because I was reading about him and I was doing a lot of his paintings, I started dreaming about him, and it'd be basically in my dreams. I'd be in 17th century, 16th century Italy, in Rome, and I'd see him, and you become almost like him, But what happened, I couldn't get him until I realised he was left-handed. As soon as I worked out he was left-handed and the strokes come from this side, and I can paint with both hands, as soon as I worked out the light comes to this side and he's left-handed. And this, Kevin, because I wanted to tell you this, because you must know that they called him profane, sinister, black,
sinister,
black eyes.
Yeah.
Sinister,
left-handed.
the Latin for left.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah, and all sort of fitted together. Then I had a chat with David Forrest, a guy we're doing a book with, and he's an expert on Caravaggio. And we deduced that when he killed the man Ranuccio in a duel, it's because like a boxer, when you're southpaw,
Southpaw,
you have an advantage. And because they said, he'd have to cut him where he did in his groin, he'd have to parry with that hand, and then maybe have a dagger, but he leaves himself open. So that if he was left-handed, it seems to work that he could get that stroke.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced from doing. I've probably done 20 or more Caravaggios, like big ones, and I'm convinced he's left-handed because as soon as I paint left with a left stroke, it works.
Yeah, it works.
Next time you dream about him, Dave, maybe you might want to check him out. I mean, see what hand he.
But
Bruce, we've had this discussion about fencing.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Left and right-handedness, and do are left-handed fencers at an advantage or what? Because they're unusual, aren't they?
Well, there's the weird thing. Fencing is, left-handed people in sports.
Fencing, by the way, sorry, Bruce. Fencing. We're not talking about handling stone.
Oh, right.
We're not talking about the old game, mate. We're talking about.
So, in a lot of sports, left-handers are disproportionately represented at the top end of sports. But fencing is absolutely quite extreme. Almost 50% of all fencing champions are left-handed.
Wow.
And there are various theories as to why. Now, I fence left-handed. I'm not world champion, but I am actually right-handed as well. So I write right-handed, I fence left-handed, and it was like discovering a different person in my head when I started doing it. I started fencing right-handed and did that for 10 years and then switched and everybody thought I was bonkers. But I got all my best results left-handed. Anyway, so there's some theories as to why. One theory is they're just more difficult to deal with because you don't meet them very often. which is true at a certain level, but not true at high level, because you meet them all the time in high level competitions, right? So the other theory is that the wiring of the brain gives the left-hander an advantage, because it doesn't necessarily, it's like see ball, hit ball, boom. And the left-hander processes that, and the same part of the brain that processes it is the same part of the brain that actions it. Whereas a right-hander, it goes to another part of the brain and goes, what we're going to do about this? He goes, see ball, hit ball. Well, better tell the other side of the brain to hit the ball then. Boom. So there's that theory that they are innately slightly quicker on the uptake. And then the third theory, which is a sort of hybrid of the two, is that left-handers are disproportionately represented because they stay with the sport because they're good, because they get better results. So it's self-selecting. So when you're a kid and you start off at 13 and you're cack-handed and you're the only one, but my God, you win everything. You think, I'm gonna keep on doing this. Whereas many people would drop out who could potentially be champions, but they go, I can't be bothered with this, and they drop out. But the left-hander sticks with it because he's innately good at it. Now, later on, other factors might come into play, but you have a bigger pool of more talented left-handers. And I think there is something in the brain part of it as well, but I don't think that's the whole story.
It's a bit like vets running, actually, Bruce. So, Dave, I like running, but when you get to my age, it's like if you stick around for long enough, there's not too many of you still doing it.
Exactly, you get selected by death.
You start winning age categories. Exactly right. Yeah. So David, I mean, coming back to the copying and imitation, are there some artists? I think you kind of hinted at this a little while ago. Are there some artists that actually you do? You said you kind of get most artists after a while. Are there some artists that actually you typically have trouble with, or if somebody asks you to do one of these, you think, oh no, I've got a friend who runs a string of hair salons, and she says, like there's certain kinds of hairstyle that, like, when someone comes in, they say they want that cut, you think, oh no. Are there certain kinds of artists where some people ask you, like, can you do me one of these, and you go, oh no?
I do turn work down, because if I haven't got an affinity, if I don't like the artist, I won't do it.
Right, that was what I was going to ask you. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, but it's a bit like you singing a song. You don't like the song, you're not going to.
Yeah, I can't do certain styles. They're just not in me.
You're not going to go to the well either and give it everything. Whereas you would, if you're. So, but I did a commission once. And this is how I learned. They wanted Frida Kahlo. There was a nice painting of Frida Kahlo with all of that, and I struggled and struggled and struggled. I couldn't get her at all. And I found that with women artists, that it seems to be because they're very delicate. Well, she was, laying in her bed doing it and stuff with a mirror. But I found that I just couldn't get it. And I eventually struggled and struggled. And I don't usually struggle that much with a painting. I can slip into different styles, and get them. And also, you've got a muscle memory. So if I've done lots of Picassos. I could do a Picasso. I could go from Caravaggio to Picasso to, whoever I've done. I've Modigliani, Soutine, with fair amount of ease, because they're all in my muscle memory. But when you get a new artist, if I'm not familiar, or if I haven't got an interest, then I generally say no.
Have you had trouble with other women artists, Dave, or is it? Do you think gender? Do you think like cross-gender imitation is a problem when we were talking about different kinds of brain states and even context, for example, in which you create a painting, life experiences? Could that be a problem for a forger or an imitator?
I've never tried a Grayson Perry, but
right.
but I might do soon, But
getting into dangerous waters there, mate.
But no, I'm joking. I like it. I like his stuff. do you know, it's funny, Kevin, because I just stick to what I like.
Yeah.
And I have to become interested in an artist. If I'm doing if I've got a commission, I won't do it, or I won't paint a picture unless I'm really something's caught me about that artist, and I start delving into it, and then you basically start, get right into the artist and step in. Like I said before, stepping in the artist's footsteps. I have to have that affinity.
Bit like songs, in it, Bruce. Really, I suppose. You like a song. You're not going to sing a song you don't like.
It's a combination of the song and the style.
Yeah.
So you sort of you look at this, broad. You say, okay, sort of like classic rock. Yeah. You broadly go, I kind of get that, and then you sort of go, well, what if I was going to imitate or do something? You'd say, well, who do you like to imitate? And of course, it depends who you sound like. But if you get under the skin of an artist who does certain things, even if you don't sound like him or her, you can still appreciate the techniques and the things they're doing, and you can actually transfer that to your own style in ways that people don't. People that don't.
Breathing,
some people say that they see the surface, but they don't see the layers and layers and layers underneath. And other people do see that, and they just intuitively do it. It's like movies, I mean, some people, the language of film, the body language of film. There's a reason. Unless it's a crap film, there should be a reason for every image in a film, and it means something. And it's fascinating how many people see that straight away, and how many people are just completely blind to it. They just they go, you say, oh, look at the, look at the dog licking its arse in the corner of that shot there. That says that's not an accident. That's there for a reason. That means something. That's and some people just don't get it. Just don't get that.
So, Bruce, when you were starting off as a singer, then did you have any kind of mentors? Is the wrong word. Did you base your vocal style on anyone?
Yeah, of course.
In your early days?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You imitate. You imitate, and you imitate the people that you can sound like.
The ones you like.
And I like him. I can sound like him. Oh, result. Right. Yeah. So you'd go out, and then people would, you do your pub gig or whatever, and you're doing cover songs usually, and people would go, "Oh, that was brilliant! Oh, you sound just like Ian Gillan from Deep Purple." Oh, I really? Oh, yeah, great result. And then after a while, it dawns on you that actually this is a one-way ticket to obscurity.
Exactly right. Eventually.
And so by the time and then you you unwittingly finish up finding your voice, usually by going into areas that you would never normally delve into with your voice. And when you push it and to its what you thought was its limit, and you go beyond it, people came up to me and said, "Oh, wow, that's really great. Oh, you really sound like you." I went, "I hate it." I said, I don't sound like Ian Gillan, and that, because now you've got nothing to hide behind.
That's right.
You're completely exposed.
It's like when you find out who you really are, it's a lucky man or woman that actually is happy with it.
Looks in the mirror and goes,
quite rare that I think.
Look like that,
I'm quite happy with that.
Have you ever done that with, when you look in a mirror, normally you just see the face on thing. But have you been in those bathrooms where they've got, you open the door and there's mirrors on the bathroom doors and things like that, and suddenly you see the back of your head. You think, oh Christ, what an ugly head! Oh, how can a human being walk around with a head that ugly?
I never do that anymore for that very reason, Bruce. If I go into a store. And sometimes I get these in changing rooms. When you go and try on a shirt or something like that, and you go into a store and you've got mirrors around the back and on the sides.
Yeah.
When I go in, I clock them and I think, don't look in that mirror, because you're just going to, no matter how good that shirt is, you're going to end up feeling shit.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So, and absolutely right. There's another interesting thing there as well about, so the image that we're most used to seeing of ourselves, of course, in everyday life is photographic images or mirror images. If you were to turn that mirror image round so that it appears exactly as if we were looking at ourselves, but you don't actually realize it's turned round, subconsciously, the brain hates that image more than it dislikes, doesn't hate it, but it dislikes that image if it's compared with the normal mirror image that we see mostly every day, because of familiarity, basically.
Yeah.
We're so used to seeing our faces in mirrors or photographs that when they're reversed and we see it as if we were looking at ourselves in everyday life, there's something very strange going on in the brain that it can't really communicate to you. So you prefer the mirror image to the straight image, I suppose.
I've just written a song called "Face in the Mirror."
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's it's about addiction, actually.
Okay. Well, that's a topic we'll be covering in a later episode. Actually, I mean, Dave, it begs the question, doesn't it, mate? I mean, what Bruce is talking about there, the real you. I mean, who's the real Dave Henty as an artist then? So you're obviously, arguably the world's greatest living copyist and imitator. I mean, can you paint a still life or a landscape? I mean, it sounds like a silly question, from yourself without imitating it.
Yeah, I could do that. But I suppose the thing with me is, maybe you'll relate to this, Bruce. When you're learning, those different styles and different vocals, the thing with me, I'm always picking up by copying closely. I'm always picking up tips, and I'm always learning. It's like you never seem to have enough time to learn and put everything in. By doing different artists, I'm learning different styles, different strokes, and different ways to compose a picture. And I find that's my sort of thing that I like.
What you're describing is, I suppose, to compare it to, my world. I'd acquired a lot of technique.
Yeah.
So I never had a vocal lesson in my life, but I researched. Yeah. So I researched the voice, and then I listened to other voices. And I went, "What's he doing there?" And I researched. I went, "Yeah, I see what he's doing. Yeah, he's doing that, and he's doing that, and he sounds like he does that because he does that, and stuff like that." And so I had all this technique, and I could sound like, 2 or 3 different people, and then I had this moment in the studio where a producer just said, "No, don't. When you get to this note, don't do what you normally do. Yeah. Sing it in your natural voice. Don't go falsetto or do the Ian Gillan thing. Just push it."
Yeah.
So I did, and everybody went, "God, that sounds fantastic! Wow, amazing!" Blah blah blah. And then I went and we were rehearsing it to go and do some gigs. It's before Iron Maiden. The band I was in before I got into Iron Maiden, and I was singing, and I lost my voice straight away. I thought, I can't sing that. I've done something that people like, and I cannot reproduce it. That's that. And I was like, what do I do? And I went, hang on a minute. Isn't that what you have technique for? Apply technique to yourself and learn how to copy yourself. Now you can reproduce yourself night after night.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, ka-ding. That's so for me, at that moment, I sort of went, hang on a minute. Technique is necessary, but ultimately a waste of time. Because inspiration is what people crave, but in order to achieve it, you need to have a level of technique so you can deliver it. It's as simple as that,
Yeah.
What point was that at, Bruce? At the transition point, when was that? Was it Samson? Was it?
Yeah. It was the last album I did with Samson, with one particular producer, and it was that realization. And then when I joined Maiden, we had an amazing producer, Martin Birch, and I mean, he's a legend, and he did the last few bits of it. He did the psychology of it.
Right.
So he started putting psychology towards it. So then famously we did this song called Number of the Beast, and there's this bit at the beginning, this kind of like whispery atmospheric vocal. And I thought, well, I've been singing this for like 2 or 3 weeks in rehearsals. It's not very demanding vocally. I don't have to go big type bits. It's just like whispered and atmospheric and blah. So I went in, did the vocal. He went, yeah, I said, it's not quite right. I said, well, what's wrong with it? Is it not loud enough? Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it out of tune? What's wrong with it? He said, no, it's I don't hear it. He said, I don't. I'm not there. I'm not in the scene.
Yeah.
What you're describing. I went, what are you talking about? So we spent 2 days on 3 lines of vocals. I threw chairs across the room. I was yelling.
I was going to say, it would have been done in a very good-natured, friendly, stress-free way, this, wouldn't it? Yeah. Just like you're describing now, Bruce.
And I got to the end, and I was, I had a headache, and I was just like, and I said, I'll give it. I'll try again. I'll do another one. I'll do another 10. I'll do another 10. And he goes, no. He said, we're going to come back tomorrow and start again. I went, no, right. Yeah. And then when we came back the next day, he told me a story. He said, what you're experiencing is exactly what happened with this legendary vocalist he worked with, Ronnie James Dio, right, from Rainbow and Sabbath and everything.
Yeah.
And he's a proper legend, And he said the same problem Ronnie had on when he did the Black Sabbath album, Heaven and Hell. I mean, what are you talking about? Oh, hey, what problem? He said, well, there's the title track, Heaven and Hell, opens with this big dramatic boom, buzzer, boom, buzzer, boom. And then the voice just comes right over the top of it. And the opening line is, sing me a song, you're a singer, right? Sing me a song, you're a singer, like bang. And so Ronnie comes in and does it. It was in time, it was in tune, everything. And mine goes, I don't get it. And Ronnie went, what's wrong? He said, well, just think about it. He said, what I need from you, Ronnie, basically, is you've been a musician your entire life. And so I want your entire life in the first line of the song. I want the drama. I want everything. I want the magnificence. And I want to hear that. And I want to be transported to be the singer. Sing me a song. You're a singer. So you're a singer, Ronnie. So sing the song. Be the singer. And he said, yeah. And I went, okay, yeah, I sort of get it. You've got to be inside so people can hear the exterior. And I listened to the stuff I did with Martin, and there's just some, I can't put my finger on it, but it's special. Whatever he got out of me was special.
You shifted to your left-handed voice, Bruce, I think, when you were doing that.
Sounds
a bit like the fencing transition. Yeah. You found something else inside that
completely.
you didn't know, is it?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I'm unblocked.
Dave, you've got to relate to that. Because actually that's what you're doing, isn't it? As an imitator, when you're painting, every brushstroke, you are, basically trying to convey to the people who are going to see your painting who that painter really was, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I don't only copy. We're creating a new Caravaggio. I'm going to age it up 400 years. But there is a thing like what Bruce was saying. So you can learn your technique and the underlying structure. But then what you can do with certain artists when you get an affinity is you can then take that somewhere else. The only thing is I can take it in that constraint of if it's a Caravaggio, I can produce another Caravaggio that no one's ever seen. If I'm doing Modigliani or Picasso, I can knock a Picasso out in the morning, which I often do. I've got a big one there. But once you've got his structure and the handwriting, then you can take it somewhere else, so you can produce your own.
Do you think there's times when, do you ever look at a painting that you've done, which is like a new version of like a new Picasso or a new Modigliani, and do you ever think to yourself, if the old boy came back to life, he'd look at that and think, blimey, I wish I'd have thought of that one. Do you ever think that? Right, that's actually better than what he did himself.
Well, I have that conversation sometimes. Because these are my heroes. You know, these are people that I look up to, and I just love their work. And I'm so, when I see their work in person, you know, the different artists that I like, I just want to get inside the work and I want to feel it, and I want to, and that's one of the things you do is when I'm recreating a painting, I know the problems they had, and this bit worked, that bit didn't, and then we got to refine that. And you're actually, it's almost like going back in time, and you're sort of standing with them and doing it.
I was looking into, before when we knew you were coming on, Dave, I was going to look into the history of forgery, actually, in imitation in the art world. It's very, very interesting. And I came across this guy you'll obviously know, called the Spanish Forger. And the Spanish forger was knocking around in the 1890s. Originally, they thought he was Spanish, but they now think he was operating out of Paris. And in fact, he had an entire workshop of people working for him. And he was faking medieval illuminated manuscripts, and he was inserting leaves in books that didn't have illustrations and all that. And he was very, very good. So good, in fact, that people started collecting his forgeries, and they knew that they were forgeries.
A bit like you, David. They're collecting henties now.
That's exactly right. Well, what I was going to ask, so obviously, Dave, you got, their original henties are out there, but has it got to the next stage where there's henty forgeries out there? So people are actually forging you. Have you ever come across this?
Yeah. There's a couple of.
Really?
Yeah. Well, do you know the funny thing is, I've got 4 brothers, and they all work in the different antiques and watches and stuff like that, silver and jewellery. And but they've got a lot of my early paintings, and they always, and they're obviously not very good. They were my first attempts. And they always say, we're going to sell these.
Early period henty. Do you ever change when you're doing? Are you ever tempted to take a picture and put a little, like, I can say, artistic joke in it? As a little sort of like just tweak it ever so slightly, so that anybody that really knew what they were looking at would go, like, put the
that's
not a real one, but it's very bloody good. It's very funny. I like that.
And actually, Bruce, I mean, psychologically, you might even do that totally unconsciously, because, of course, artistic styles, the artistic styles of the masters and the painters that Dave paints, can't be divorced from the times in which they were painted, the context in which they were painted. So you could argue, I mean, I might be barking up the wrong tree here, Dave, that actually it's the same with the art of forgery and imitation. You can't totally divorce your take on old masters from the context in which you grew up and your art developed. So maybe, I mean, you could, I suppose, what Bruce is saying is inserting like little artistic flourishes, a bit of a joke, almost like, artistic gargoyles in the painting. But I suppose you've also got to guard against the fact that you might not actually, overemphasize a facet of a painting simply because you are not the artist and you're painting it in a different time, I suppose.
Yeah, looking through 21st century eyes.
Yeah.
No, there's very interesting, because there was a forger, Van Meegeren, and he did a load of dodgy Vermeers and stuff in the First World War. And he sold loads. He sold them to Goring and quite a few others. And after the war, they arrested him for collaborating with the Germans. But he said, well, these are fakes. I was selling them fakes. But and now they look at it and they see that he took one of the images in the Vermeer painting looked like Greta Garbo, like a film star of that day. You sort of look and you think, because it must have gone into his subconscious. He's making a woman up, and he's sort of like maybe seeing that image. So I'm very aware of that side. So I try and guard against that, and not put myself into it, or the images that you'd see that would taint it. I try and with the Caravaggio, I try and step back 400 years, and there's a funny thing I just wanted to mention is I had to do a Lowry commission, this Lowry, And my friend David Forrest, I said he's written the book Art World Underworld, but there's a passage in there, and it takes us back to Italy. We go to Italy and we're on the run, and then he said, in the book, he said, from this space here by the fountains, 5 kilometres that way was the whole of Caravaggio's life in that time he was there. Was all around this sort of thing. And anyway, he described this alley and stuff like that, and it took you back, And I couldn't paint for 2 days at the Lowry because I was so taken back to this time. He created we walked past a dark alley and there was a fight in an old inn and stuff like that, and it was like stepping back 400 years. And I couldn't paint for 2 days. All I could think about was Caravaggio. So it's quite.
You weren't in that mind space, that mindset.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you do as an artist. You get your you have to be in that that mindset. But there is structure there. You like Bruce said earlier, there is structure. So you have to guard against these different things. And the more experienced you become, the more you know that'd be a bum note, or that wouldn't work, or that'd be off key. So So that coming back to that, Kev.
You mentioned books, David. Have you? I mean, I would imagine with your life, some of the people you've met. I mean, has anybody tried to, put you in a biographical thing, or even put you in a fiction book as a character, or stuff like that? Because it could be. There's quite a lot of intrigue and all the rest of it. I would imagine at high levels in art. I mean, the sums of money these things are changing hands for is mental.
Peter James, the crime writer. I'm in 2 of his books, but he's got one coming out in September the 28th called "Picture Me Dead," about an art forger.
Oh no! Oh dear! I hope that's not prophetic, is it? I hope not.
No, and David Forrest, my mate, we've done a book about Billy the Brush and myself. He's another forger, and it's called Art World Underworld, and it's a candlelit trip through the back streets of art. And it's basically some of our adventures. Some of them are real, some of them are not. So you put them in a context where we can't be done by the law.
Yeah.
And when's that coming out?
That's coming out at the same time in September. Art World Underworld.
Okay, well, presumably it'll be coming out and you won't be going in, mate.
No, we cover it ourselves. Some of it might be real,
Bruce, I've just got to ask you before we wrap it up. Sorry, Dave, come back to that in a minute. I've just got to ask you, we were talking about, original forgeries, and are there, Dave Henty forgeries out there? Obviously, going back to music, there's a lot of cover bands. And I imagine there's quite a few Iron Maiden cover.
Oh yeah, loads.
Have you ever been tempted? I mean, it'd be very unfair to sneak into a pub as Bruce Dickinson to watch an Iron Maiden cover band. But have you ever been tempted to sneak in with a beanie and I don't know, in disguise and just see what they're like?
No, I've done it.
Have you?
No, I've done it. I've done it. I mean, and not even snuck in with a beanie. I mean, I've gone in there.
Really?
And said,
What's the reaction? What's the reaction? I mean, when your band goes up on a Saturday night, do they?
They love it because I'm not there to go. Oh, you bastards! What are you doing? I mean, some of them are actually really good.
Yeah, are they? Okay.
Some of them are really good. There's one group. I think I'm not sure if they're American or Mexican. I think American or Mexicans or a mix anyway of girls, the Iron Maidens. And
what a great name,
the Iron Maidens, and they're absolutely brilliant. And of course, they're all girls, but they all sort of dress up. They're dressed up in the equivalent of drag because they're dressed as blokes. I was watching them in Mexico City because we were doing some shows around South America, and of course they did the smart thing and went, "Hang on a minute, there's 20,000 Iron Maiden fans in town. Maybe we should book some gigs in Mexico City the night before." Great. So we're all there. So me and Steve, we went along to watch them. We in this little theatre, and it was brilliant.
Listen, mate, we've had a wonderful time talking to you. We really have, Bruce. It's been one of the best ever, isn't it?
I loved it. I'll tell you what, if they let me loose and I come down to Brighton, I'd love to come and see you. You see your studio.
Definitely.
Come down for lunch. And we'll paint some pictures.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
I'm fascinated because I mean, I honestly, I'm properly rubbish at art.
Me too. Me
You know,
too. Yeah.
So,
but then I can't sing. But do you know what?
Well,
do you know, I often have people round that want to be artists. You know, they've got a real love of art.
yeah.
And I say to them, don't be scared. Just throw the paint on the canvas and see what happens. You know, take away that fear. A bit like singing. You know, you go out and sing in the pub and you're frightened. You know, so, you know, just see what comes out, because you never know, do you? You know.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely wonderful.
It's been brilliant. I've loved it.
Thanks so much for taking the time to
Yeah,
speak to us.
fantastic.
Mate. And
Fantastic.
it's been an absolute belter. Hello, folks. We hope you're enjoying Psycho Schizo Espresso. Just to remind you, it's a Pod Prod production, so please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. You can also reach out to us on email at pse@podprod.co.uk and follow us on social media on the hashtag PsychoSchizoEspresso. You can also, of course, become a Patreon by clicking on www.patreon.com/PsychoSchizoEspresso, where you can gain exclusive access to unedited and unfiltered content, if your brain can possibly handle any more of me and Bruce.